Sitting on my moaning bench, my new moaning bench. Thought it was time to christen it and have my first moan. I can't promise you I'm not actually going to get a bit tearful during this moan. Because what I'm going to moan about is really important to me. And it seems that not many people want to actually listen when it comes to this subject, and they actually shaking a bit because I have a very, very deep anger about this. But dog does not stop barking. That's another moan. I want to talk about ableism as a person living with disabilities. In fact, many of my disabilities were caused by doctors and medical neglect, and the health service in Wales acting illegally. A lot of people think that where I am physically is a natural progression of my Ehlers-Danlos loss and the other conditions it caused, but it's not. So I've experienced life as a person with pretty severe disabilities since an accident in 2006 that put me in bed for 10 years, and it took away all of my freedoms. It took away all of my choices. You know, I was deemed unemployable because you couldn't work from home back then, right? And I don't get to choose where I live because I need an accessible house with no stairs, and bungalows are very expensive in my area, so you have to rely on social housing, and there aren't many bungalows that are fully accessible because the bungalows that were built ironically weren't built with wheelchairs in mind. And also, when you use wheelchairs, you need your building to have wider doorways, turn in circles, so it makes the property need to be a little bit bigger than the older bungalows. So you have to get what you're given. You don't get to choose, and so you don't get to choose where you live. You can't work because you're deemed unemployable, so your income is lower. So you don't have money to choose where you live, right? So I don't like where I live. It's a little village with nothing around it, nothing in it, nothing to do. Can't get out of it easily because I can't afford taxis. I can't always use the bus physically. And then sometimes when you do manage to get on the bus and you manage to get your wheelchair on the bus, people are either sitting in the wheelchair space or they've just filled it with luggage anyway, because people don't think, do they? So ableism. So in recent years, it seems that the world has finally started to admit how unacceptably racist it is. And obviously, as a white person, I've never experienced racism, but racism makes no sense to me. I think it's disgusting and illogical and ignorant. And despite many in society finally speaking up about it, not enough has changed, right? From my understanding, from watching videos and trying to learn a bit more about it. But I'm going to talk about racism vis-a-vis ableism, because I feel that it's the only way to point things out right now. So there was a social movement, wasn't there, to rally against racism. Like I said, it hasn't ended racism because so many humans are stupid. They really are. But what I don't understand is how so many of you can rally against racism and then completely ignore ableism. And you see people on YouTube videos, like, say there's a video about a person with disabilities, and you see, and like they have somebody next to them in the video doing something, and comments is just full of how good that person is. Oh, bless that person for helping the person with disabilities. And the focus is never on the person with the disabilities. It's on the amazing person, apparently, who's actually doing something and treating that person like a human. I haven't sworn so far. I'm doing well, right? Why is the focus not on the person with disabilities? Why is the focus all about backslapping and congratulating the person without disabilities? The focus is never on the person with disabilities. And if the video did something that makes that person with disabilities, makes their life a tiny, tiny bit easier, even just in that moment, and then undisabled people jump on and they're congratulating and, oh, it's wonderful, isn't it? There is kindness. Well, the fact is, if society changed in the first place, that person with disabilities wouldn't have needed the help. It's an ableist society that put the person with disabilities in that position in the first place. I'll give you an example of ableism and how bad it is. So I live in Wales, and there was a government report issued. I haven't gone through it in its entirety, but I will. A government report was issued about the deaths caused, the COVID deaths in Wales in 2020. And our government concluded that 70% of COVID deaths weren't caused by COVID. This is why I'm going to get a bit upset. They were caused by the nationally, and I mean UK-wide, nationally implemented National Institute for Clinical Excellence policy to let us die. Judge the patient on how well they can walk. And if they can't walk well, do not intubate. Do not even attempt to save. Just let them die. So our value as a human was placed upon our ability to walk. So on a good day, I can able pass and I can mask, and I would have been, I'm going to say I would have been treated. I wouldn't have been treated, because they would have looked at my medical history and decided I'm not worthy of it. So 7 out of 10 people who died were left to die due to their disabilities. Now, what if it was, the policy had stated, if their skin is darker than this colour, do not treat? There would have been riots, and rightly so, because that would have been an absolutely hideous and hideous policy. I hope you can still hear. And yet, people were still taking to the streets protesting against wearing a mask. Wearing a mask was what, an infringement upon your civil liberties, was it? And then the very same people who would complain about wearing a mask would go online and congratulate an undisabled person for helping, pat their back for helping a person with disabilities. So I don't understand how you can fight different isms and then support ableism. Make that make sense to me. And if you think you don't support ableism, your silence is complicity. How many people, do you know, on Facebook, I've been watching on social media, the number of people who will respond to a post about racism, and then the number of people who will not respond to a post about ableism. Do you know how hard it is to get one person to share a post about ableism? Do you know how hard that is? It feels impossible. And meanwhile, we can't get jobs, we can't choose where to live, we can't use public transport. There's a grocery shop in this village I can't even get my wheelchair into because the owner illegally uses a turnstile that blocks it. So I can't even buy food in person in the village where I live because of ableist policies that are illegal. They're illegal, and he's just doing it. And you don't fight against it. You don't fight against it. Your silence is complicity. Your silence supports it. Your silence equates to you being ableist. It really does, because silence is supporting this. And it matters. This is 10 minutes. I'm going to stop now. Just please, please, can we have a little bit of support? Please?